Legends of America. We're here at New Jersey Hall of Fame at American Dream. We're adjacent to MetLife Stadium. We're also right next door to the theme park here at American Dream and the water park, center of the universe for fun. And I am so honored today to have with us the 48th governor of the state of New Jersey. I voted for you twice. I just want to start off on the right foot there.
Thank you.
And former chairman of the 9/11 Commission, former president of Drew University, and a remarkable man. I could talk about your bio for a long, long time. I just want to condense it for now. And I'm very honored that you're here because I'll tell you right from the get-go, that you're one of the inspirations for this entertainment and learning center. And I really mean that because it was an idea born in a number of inspired New Jerseyans' heads, myself included, many, many years ago. But we ran into lots and lots of obstacles, like we tend to do in life, adversity, which we'll talk about. But every step of the way, I and others would remind our leaders of what you said about Jersey pride, that when you feel good, you feel anything is possible. And so I think more than any other leader throughout the course of New Jersey history, you've done more on the front for New Jersey pride, such an important front. And so I got to start off and ask you, all these years later, you were governor from 80 to 90 approximately.
90.
How do you feel about New Jersey pride since the Jersey and You Perfect Together commercials?
Well, we never have enough, because when it's an individual or a state or whatever it is, if you feel pride about something, then it leads you to go further. If you have proud of what you're doing, then you can do more. But unless you feel that pride, you're not going to get very much accomplished.
Yeah. And so it comes back to just human nature. If you're not proud of something, you don't really think much of the future. But when you can feel the pride, you feel anything's possible. I think this museum is a step in the right direction, but our leaders could probably do more. What advice do you have for future governors, for future state leaders on the Jersey Proud front?
Well, find ways in which you can increase that pride. You want people feeling good about themselves. You want them to feel good about their state, their region, everything else. Because that's where you start from. You got to accomplish great things if you start from that one place. And I think as governor or as a leader of any kind, you're in a position to encourage that pride.
More in the way of commercials, perhaps?
No, yes, you can do commercials, but do things to emphasize the pride. I mean, when I was governor, there were things New Jersey didn't have. I thought, well, if you can get that, you're going to have more pride. We wanted the best arts center in the country, and we wanted it in this state's largest city. Everybody said, nobody will do that, you can't do it, it won't be a success. Well, we did it, and it was a success. New Jersey had only one sports team, and people didn't think that was going to be successful. The New York Giants, they thought they're going to back New York. Well, we said, no, that's not enough. Let's bring in the Jets. Let's bring in the Devils. Let's bring in the Nets. Let's bring other sports teams into the states to increase our good feeling about ourselves and the kind of things that go on in New Jersey. Never be satisfied. There's always something else you can do. And the more you can increase that pride, the better the state can be. If you feel good about yourself, you can do anything.
And it really ties into tourism, right?
Yes.
There's no question about, like, when you think about the fact that your commercials were stellar. I would love to see the next governor do more of that, Jersey and You, and brag a little bit. Actually, Springsteen said it during his acceptance speech. You didn't see that part. He said, let's stick it in their faces, the other states.
Right.
Well, he did actually talk a little bit about it, electricity and a spin to the moon and so forth. But when you think about these tourism commercials, not just New Jersey, but other states are playing their commercials in New Jersey, trying to get people to go to Virginia or South
Yeah,
Carolina
that's right.
or wherever. But they sort of cancel each other out when you think about it, because commercials are commercial at the end of the day, showing beaches or mountains, whatever. But the best assets I've always thought that New Jersey has to bring tourism into the state are the people.
Absolutely.
They're on the front line.
Absolutely.
They're on the internet. They're on telephones.
No, that's
So
right.
you do agree with that, huh?
Oh, I agree with that one. When I was running for governor, I made a couple of proposals that my staff thought were crazy. I wanted to increase by a large amount the amount we were spending on the arts, because when you're a state that cares about the arts, I think that's something to be proud of. I wanted to explode the tourism budget. Everybody said there's no votes there. What do you want to do that for? Because when you talk about tourism, you talk about what's good about the state. You talk about the kind of things that you can do to enhance the state image, to bring more people into the state, to more people have pride in New Jersey.
And isn't it, is it 2/3 of the economy? Or maybe not 2/3, but it's a big number.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And it's nowhere near what it could be.
So your point is that spend money to make money.
Yeah, absolutely, and increase the pride. I mean, right now we're approaching, as we talk, we're approaching a sesquicentennial, exactly, I say that right, sesquicentennial of the state, of the country.
250 years
That's right.
in 2026.
That's right. We were the cockpit of the revolution. More happened in New Jersey to win this battle against the British than happened anywhere else in the country.
Yeah.
Washington spent 2 winters here. And the major battles, things like Monmouth, Trenton, were fought here that determined the success of the revolution. We should be blowing that up. We should be talking about it. We should be bringing people into the state to visit those areas.
Yeah.
That's something we should be doing now.
We're going to be talking about America 250. That was toward the end of our podcast today, and you have a very unique perspective. Your family goes back to the very beginning of New Jersey and this country. But from Pride, I want to go to the name of your book, Politics of Inclusion. And I want to get your thoughts. Could you have ever predicted how polarized this country has become? It's just awful, and it's a terrible thing for our children to see. But Politics of Inclusion, talk about what the gist of that book is. And I know you gave a TED Talk on it about compromise, about bringing people together. I guess the first question is, where did we go wrong in this country? Do you have a theory about it?
Nothing happens right away. And by the way, this is something I don't think you can blame on any one leader. We blame each other. I mean, the fact that people now aren't giving each other credit, the idea that people are now blaming each other for this and that, the idea that we're not talking to each other in a civilized way, that's our fault. It's nobody else's. I mean, when I was very active in politics, I never got anything done. Nothing. If I said 30 things I'm proud of, every single one of those 30 things was bipartisan. I went and got Democrats, I'm a Republican, to support the program as well as I did. And we took credit together when it was successful. And that's what we got to get back to. And to get there, by the way, we've got to compromise. And that's become a dirty word. This country wouldn't exist if it wasn't for a compromise. And interesting enough, it's called the New Jersey Compromise between the big states and the small states.
New Jersey plan, the Virginia plan.
Yeah, that's right. The New Jersey plan was the one that got the compromise going, out of which we were born. And so we got to remember that. And compromise is a good word, not a bad word. And to me, recognizing other people, what they stand for, who they are, where they come from, and taking that into the greater mosaic of the United States and New Jersey is what we have to do if we're going to be successful. We'll never be successful divided.
There is no question about that. And we could see it in our lives.
Yeah.
People on both sides of the aisle, if they take the blinders off,
Yeah.
you've got to realize nothing good has ever happened in your life without some sort of compromise. You can't
No.
be stubborn. Nobody will want to deal with you.
Hey, I was governor for 8 years. I never had a Republican legislature during those 8 years. Not the whole thing. I never had a state senate that was Republican. In those 8 years, they never blocked a single major appointee. None. And there's 8 years, all the great things, I think great things that we accomplished,
Yeah.
were accomplished together. And we were proud of it. We took credit together.
Everything is solvable, just about, isn't it?
Of course. Of course.
As
it
long
is.
as you work
Yeah,
together.
It's the problems the problems were created by human beings. They can be solved by human beings, no question about that.
Yeah. In order to solve this terrible dilemma, civil discourse so bad and paralysis you can't solve, you have to understand what the underlying problem is. And I have my own theory. And tell me if I'm crazy, that the conflict is institutionalized at this point, with consultants and media consultants, political consultants, television. I think back on it, it really began, in my view, back in, and this is not a knock against one party or the other. That's not what this is about. And the truth be known, it probably even started before this, but I think of the Willie Horton ad in '88. Lee Atwater really went for the juggler in that, in that campaign. And then after Bush won, I could remember John Tower nomination. That was derailed. Then they got even with Jim Wright, and they removed him as speaker. And then I think of Rush, and I think of Crossfire on CNN, the Democrats and the Republicans screaming at each other. And the point is that it's so embedded in the fabric of public service now that it's a tough thing to overcome. So what could be the solution? Ray Chambers said this, it's only a question of time before the 99% revolt against the 1%. Is it something that could somehow be solved on social media, where enough?
Yeah, that's part of it. It's got to be solved in many, many places by many, many people. And it starts with us. It starts with you and I. It starts with the individual. It starts with the family. You have problems within your family. These days people do. People don't come to the dinner table because they're going to argue with each other. When you solve it at the dinner table, you start to solve it in a bigger way. And the people who are the worst, stop voting for them. A lot of those people, the worst, get elected and reelected and reelected. You can't let that continue. You've got to reward the people who are willing to reach out to other people, whether you agree with them on everything or not. I think one of the great things about this country is we used to be able, I think we still can, look beyond party. And where you see a good man or woman who really wants to do good for the country and is trying their very best, vote for them. Even if they're not your own party, vote for them.
Yeah. What could the call to arms you're saying is start locally, start with your family, start in your community, reach out, listen, share ideas, compromise. I always use Hall of Fame as an example, one of many in New Jersey, where we've brought people together on the common denominator, Jersey pride, and inspiring our children with heroes and wisdom. And if you look at our board, we've got Democrats and Republicans, people from all walks of life. So coming together, common missions is certainly one way to do it, but it's quite the challenge because there's so much anger out there. And anger begets anger, and you start having fights in your head with, what did I just read? What is this person crazy? So we're going to have to work at it Are you hopeful?
I'm always hopeful, and I'm an optimist by nature. So I think we're going to work it out. But it's not going to be easy, and you've got to work it out step by step. It's not going to happen overnight. And I say it starts in the local community. It starts with your friends and your neighbors. It starts sometimes with people who you don't really like that much, but you can find something in common with. It starts with organizations we belong to. You know, there's a book called Bowling Alone. And the idea of bowling, the book Bowling Alone, was that we used to all go out to bowling leagues. And it used to be a community activity. Now, that's not going on anymore. Now people, since bowling alone, are doing everything alone. We got to start doing things with each other again.
I agree with that sentiment, but I do think about the anger. I think about the challenge here. And years ago, I was in a meeting with someone from a presidential administration. We'll leave it at that because I don't want to get too political in the show. And they were telling us at this table how they were optimistic. The other side, the other party was going to have to go along with their initiatives. And I challenged him on it. And I said, I personally think that no, talking to friends in one party, the other party of mine, who were so angry, this was 15 years ago. My theory back then was that we'd have to hit rock bottom before we make any meaningful progress. I hope I'm wrong, but that's certainly possible, right? Before something happens that, okay, wait a minute, we're Americans, we really do have to come together.
But it's not, you said the individual you were talking to said eventually they're going to have to come across to our ideas.
Yes.
They don't.
Right.
Until it becomes our ideas, not your ideas and my ideas.
Right.
When you find a way to compromise, find out what it is about my idea you really don't like, and how can you change it so it becomes our idea.
Right.
Then you can move forward. We never would have, the kind of thing we accomplished, never would have built the Arts Center without compromise.
Let's talk about this. You've got a lot of proud accomplishments that came about because you compromised. What are some of the proudest accomplishments from your administration? I remember you, of course, as the education governor, and they even recognized you as such nationally.
Well, I started in the legislature. One of the things I'm proudest of my whole political career is I wrote the state's largest scholarship program, the Education Opportunity Fund, which everybody said was too big an idea. It said basically that any kid in this state who's able to get into a college should be first accepted, second be able to pay for it. And if they're having problems, there should be some mechanism in the college to help them succeed. That Education Opportunity Fund has educated more kids, I think, than any other program in the United States, in any state. It was the first one of its kind in the country. But again, it was bipartisan. It was reaching across the aisle. There was a Democratic governor at that point. I had to go to the governor, get his support. He had an idea. My idea was every kid deserves a college education. His idea was a lot of kids get into college, but they're not properly prepared because the schools aren't any good in some cases. And they flunk out right away. What's the point of getting them in? So we put the two ideas together. We compromised. And the idea was, yes, my idea that every kid should be able to go to college if they had the ability. His idea that, yes, if they got into college, they deserve to stay there. There should be a mechanism to help them stay there. We combined the two ideas as one-to-one bill. And that bill is still providing as we speak. I can't tell you the number of people who've been educated by that bill.
How are we doing, in your opinion, on education, public education? New Jersey always finishes right up there. I think number one this past year.
Yeah, we've been among one in some colleges. We're not doing very well. I'm talking nationally now. Internationally, rankings were lower than we used to be when I was governor. We've gone down, not up. There's a number of reasons for that. But the problem frustrates me is we're still arguing about the same things we're arguing with when I was governor. I did something no other governor did. I thought the teachers were the heart of the education system. Therefore, we increased teacher pay statewide. Nobody had ever done that before. And the boom in schools and the idea of the pride that teachers felt now, that somebody's recognizing what they did. We followed that with a teacher recognition program, which took some of the best teachers in every school and honored them every year as the best teacher. Instead of honoring a football coach who was the math teacher, the English teacher was getting honored locally in every community. Those kind of things, I think, really increased the pride teachers had in their own work, what they were doing with students, and the whole enterprise started to move forward. We had 38 different education reforms when I was governor, and we were 2 presidents of the United States in the State of the Union mentioned New Jersey as a state that was leading the country in education. I was pretty proud of that.
You met President Clinton
Yeah.
back then. I think you handed off the reins.
Oh, yeah.
as
Yeah,
the-
President Clinton and I still are good friends.
Yeah.
Because we're both people who thought education was at the heart of everything.
So there's a return on investment,
Yeah.
is what you're saying. When you
Absolutely.
pay teachers more, you're going to make more progress.
Hey, teaching is the center of everything. We don't pay teachers enough for the job they do. We don't pay teachers more for excellence. Teaching is the only profession in the country where you don't get paid 1 cent more for being good at your job. Think about that. Plus which, when I was governor, the majority of the money was being spent on teachers. Now, increasingly every year, the vast majority of the money is being spent on administrators. Not that administrators are bad, but that's not what we should be spending the most money on. It should be teachers and should be teaching.
Do you think this is jumping into my head because I had this conversation with my 17-year-old daughter last night at the dinner table, and she said, Daddy, you're always talking about arete, which we're going to get into, realizing your highest, best sense of self, and it's really doing what you love, loving what you do. Her point was she thought education was a little too traditional, that schools don't do enough in high school to guide you to your passions, so college could solidify, Instead, a lot of kids come out of high school not knowing what they want to do and first thinking about it in college, and it takes a long time. Do you have a theory?
Yeah, she's not wrong. I think the schools,
That's what I told her. That's
yeah,
good.
Yeah, the schools should be doing more, and no question about it. But you got to start. You got to start understanding you're not going to succeed in this life unless you can do the basics. We're still, unfortunately, letting some kids out of school who don't read and comprehend what they read,
Crazy.
who don't know simple math and therefore can't get jobs that require simple math, who don't know the history of this country and therefore can't defend it very well. If you ask a lot of people what are the 3 branches of government, they college, some college guys, certainly high school, they can't tell you. Now that's just wrong.
So many of them don't even know there was a 9/11.
No, that's true.
A lot of adults in
That's
this
true.
state have
That's true.
forgotten.
No, and so we got a lot of work to do in education still, but a lot of it's fundamental. It's not hard, but we just don't focus on it. And we don't do it. We argue about the peripheral, all the things out here. We got to get to the basics.
And
back
you
to the
can't
basics.
just solve it with educators. I mean,
No.
parents
Oh yeah.
need to step their game up, don't
That's
they?
right. Parents are absolutely essential to the whole equation, and every educator knows that. And it's not a hard thing to say that parents are essential to a kid's education. They are, absolutely. And so is the teacher. And when teachers and parents work together, magic happens.
I like that. That's good. Education, so important. The environment. A lot of people give credit to Jim Florio. He deserves credit with the Superfund laws and so forth. But the right to know, that happened on your watch, didn't it?
Yeah.
And because we had a big problem. I remember that from the 80s with needles washing
Yeah,
up.
we did. I'm proud of the fact we cleaned up the beaches. I'm proud of the fact we put a system in place along the New Jersey shore so you know when you swim in those beaches, the water's clean. Otherwise, we'll close the beaches because we test it
Yeah.
3 times a week. That's important. We know that toxicity existed in so many places. Now we've pretty well gotten rid of. It's still, we find it every now and then. We're still cleaning up those sites. But so about Jim Superfund, we worked pretty well together because, he wrote the Superfund law. I use a Superfund 6 times more than any other state in the country. So we brought a lot of the money into New Jersey and were able to clean up the results really of the 20s and 30s when we didn't know what we were doing. We were dumping toxic stuff right in our streams.
Perfect example. I mean, at the time, it felt overwhelming. How do we ever solve this? But working together, in that case, you work closely with a Democrat as a Republican, and
Yeah.
you guys figured it out. We all figured it out. So that's just amazing.
I had close friends in the legislature. And almost the majority were Democrats, not all, but a lot of them. And I would go to them when I had an idea and say, what do you think about this? They'd say, I'd say, well, if you think it's a good idea, would you put it in the bill? And then it was my idea. A Democrat would put it in a bill, and then I would come out for it as governor. And we'd work in a bipartisan way to get that bill through. And that's how we worked again and again and again and again. That's very seldom been done since I left office.
Environment begs the question because some would say it's one of our many people would say it's an existential threat to mankind. What would you like to see? What's your advice? I'll be coming back to that a lot because I really feel public servants need to listen to people like you who are very even-keeled, that have such great ideas from your being governor, and you put a lot of thought into all these issues, I know. What advice do you have for our public servants and the public as it relates to the environment? How do we overcome?
Listen to the science. We didn't have as great science years ago as we do now. Now we have a number of scientists who can look at clean air and clean water, tell us how dangerous the situation is in various localities and various areas, and also tell you what we have to do to prevent that in the future or to clean up the problem today. I mean, we know that we cannot continue to exist with accumulating plastics that are occurring in the ocean. They're getting into our bodies. Every one of us is walking around with plastic in our brain, in our bodies, and that can't be good and isn't good. Well, how do we start to change that? Well, we've got to figure ways not only to get the plastic out of the ocean, but stop putting so much in. We know that. We know the climate is warming. Everybody knows that. There was very little scientific disagreement on that anymore. We know when it warms past a certain point, human life is going to become more and more difficult on this planet. Well, then there is no excuse if you're living on this planet, want to run for office, not to try to do something about it. I was proud of the fact New Jersey, we were the first state to recognize global warming in the country. My last year as governor, we recognized it. We set a path and said, this is what we got to do in the future. We've done very little of that, but we've got to do that. And we know, the science knows when the Earth's in trouble.
Listen to the science, great advice. Cut back on emissions as much as you can. Clean energy. We need to, where are they falling short in Washington on this?
All sorts of ways, because they haven't, some presidents have done better than others, but none of them have really said, there isn't a more important problem. There really isn't, because this is, the more we learn now, it's amazing for all the galaxies discovered, this universe and beyond. There is no place that we've found that is fit for human life, except this one little blue and green globe that we live on. And that tells us that if we don't take care of it, that we may be sacrificing the only place that human life can exist.
This may be an example of where we have to hit rock bottom before we're galvanized to unite and make progress. And really, all 200 nation states need to work together on this, because no one nation state can solve the problem by itself, but yet we're all facing extinction eventually. Could it be, Ray Chambers mentioned this to me in our interview, that within a few years, he thought, you could be seeing a few 100 million people or more having to migrate where they live from because it's getting too hot or the water level is rising too fast. Are you hopeful that that tragedy happens, that maybe it will galvanize countries to work closer together?
Well, how many lives you have to lose for that to happen? We've, as people, and New Jersey is a perfect example of this. We've galvanized civilizations along the coast because it has everything. As we know in New Jersey, it's a wonderful place to be. So we've got these huge centers of population all around the world gathered on the oceans. As those oceans start to raise rate, we're going to have these incredible migrations. And we know from our own problems with migration in this country, they're harder and harder to solve. We know that people are going to rise to try to go to dry land. What country is that in, and will that country open its borders to let people come to the dry land? And what happens if they don't? There's going to be conflict and wars and all of that kind of thing. And the longer we wait, the more trouble we're going to be in.
What's the organization that is it the United Nations that could be the solution?
Well, there aren't many. There are a number of international organizations, and some of them are actually working on this problem, but they're not large. The United Nations is the obvious one, because the only one that everybody belongs to. But it's hard, and I think even this country, how many people listen to the United Nations?
Yeah, it's a toothless tiger. I think I've heard analogies like that.
Yeah.
That talks a good game, but it doesn't get things done. While we're on the subject of existential threats, because there's more than the environment, unfortunately. Next up, AI. How do you feel about AI? It's coming at us so quickly, isn't it?
About what?
AI, artificial
yeah.
intelligence.
Before we finish the show, it's going to be in trouble. We're going to be in trouble. It is. I mean, we think within 2 years, there are going to be artificial intelligence beings that are going to be able to reason. Not human beings, but artificial reason. That opens up all sorts of hope and all sorts of problems. And we're not ready for them yet. And yet it's very, very close now. I remember sitting at a conference in Boston and hearing about how wonderful it was going to be when there were all self-driving cars. And the professor who was talking said how wonderful that was going to be. I left the conference and got in my Uber to go to the airport. And the driver was telling me what a wonderful country that this was, because he'd come in as an immigrant, and here he was in this job. Not only did he love driving, but a job where he could make his own hours, and he could spend time with his family. What a wonderful place. I didn't feel like telling him I'd just come at a conference where somebody said his job was be gone in a couple of years, because there are going to be machines driving the car. But driving, just as an example, is one of the, if not the largest occupation in the country. We put together all the truck drivers, the car drivers, everything. And if we're going to go to AI, basically driving the cars, there's going to be, what are we going to do about those people? What about those jobs?
Regulation. We're going to have to regulate what's going, if it can be regulated. The stat I heard is that within a few years, AI will be, I think, 13 trillion times smarter than any one human being. And of course, we remember what Stanley Kubrick predicted with Space Odyssey 2001.
Yeah.
It was the first movie I ever saw in West Orange with my dad when the computer HAL takes over. So this is, I think a lot of people have their head in the sand on this, thinking about all the wonderful things that are going to happen. And surely a lot of wonderful things will happen with AI, but it's got to be tamed.
Yeah, I think, by the way, I think education is one of them. If we use AI properly, it can revolutionize education in the classroom in a very good way.
Yes, but
Yeah, but,
kids are already using AI to write term
yeah, I
papers,
know,
and they're
I
not
know.
thinking.
But all of this takes, again, in a democracy particularly, all of this takes good government leadership. And are we going to be able to attract and elect the kind of people who are going to deal with this problem, which is the kind of problem we've never, ever had to deal with before?
So before I move on to the next existential threat,
Yeah.
I was going to ask you earlier, how do you attract good people when politics have become so nasty? How many times have we heard, who would want to run for office
Yeah.
in this environment where you're attacked as soon as you declare your candidacy?
Well, this is the problem because we believe in democracy. We believe that democracy is one of the few governments that we would want to live under, where we have some say in who's getting elected. But if we are driving the most able people away from running for office, or making it not something that you and I would want to do, or want our children to do, then we're in for some really, really serious problems, because there are a lot of systems in the world that aren't democracies, and we have warred under a number of them. We are arguing with a number of others at the moment as we speak. And the democracies seem, in a way, to be having some problems now in the world. And yet, if it's not going to be democracy, what is it going to be? As Churchill said, democracy is the worst system in the world except for all the rest. And so we've got to think about the democracy. Got to teach in our schools again about the democracy, so our kids really understand what democracy is, what it brings. And then we got to encourage the best and the brightest to say public service is something you should want to do with your life.
You want to remind them that it is indeed, or should be, a noble profession that is the answer to AI and environment and nuclear threats and so forth. Problem is, kids look at politics and they don't see a noble profession. They see adults acting like children.
That's right.
Okay.
But again, the answer to that is people. The answer to that is getting the right people and electing the right people and supporting the right people.
I'm trying to think how it would happen, though. And I just wonder if the next generation looks at it and says, you know what, this system's so broken. They've handed it off to us, the nerve of them. What went wrong, and how do we fix it? Well, this is a crazy theory because I'm a capitalist and I like making money and spending money, and I want, that capitalism is the answer for vibrant, communities. But I wonder if our children will recognize that beginning in the 1950s, the age of consumerism, and it was created back in the 50s. Our leaders, as I understand it, were afraid we'd go back into a depression like we did after World War I. We were coming out of World War II. And then I think man has gotten rewired into thinking the good life is homes and cars and looking fabulous and so forth. Maybe we went too far, not realizing, the good life is realizing your highest, best sense of self and doing it for the greater good and lifting other people all around me, because that's a rising tide, lifts all boats. Do you think it could take the next generation saying we're fed up with that definition of capitalism? Maybe it's time to redefine.
Yeah, well, everything starts in the schools. I mean, it's really, how you define capitalism, how you define democracy, what the best is, what the worst is. You should learn when you're very, very, very young, and then build on that.
Right.
And Teddy Roosevelt, was elected president at a time when we had a so-called Gilded Age. And the Gilded Age was between the top and the bottom. There was a huge, huge gap. And the streets of New York City were a perfect example of that. Gilded mansions all over the place, and factories that paid nothing and had long hours where women and children worked. Teddy Roosevelt took that on. And he attacked those people who were abusing the system. He reformed it. He did things that nobody thought any leader could do. He took on J.P. Morgan. He took on everybody. And ended up with a very different United States than it would have been without him. And that's leadership. Now, he was an extraordinary human being, and we can't always produce those kind of people.
Right.
But
We have an opportunity, though. You mentioned it before, America 250. We're coming up on the nation's 250th birthday since the signing of the Constitution. And it's interesting, and your family was there right at the beginning. So you're as qualified as anyone to answer this question. When it comes to inspiring our children, I wonder if it's right under our nose. Look at what the founding generation looked to for inspiration in the writing of the Constitution. They looked to ancient Greek wisdom,
that's right.
concepts like arete, which is the soul of this entertainment learning center,
Yeah.
realizing your best sense of self for the greater good. And that, of course, was the concept at the cradle of civilization that Plato, Aristotle, and Socrates tried to inspire their people, their citizens with. So, sound like a good idea to remind our children of that concept right now and try to move them in that direction?
Well, I had a good friend who was at school years ago, at a school called Harrow in England. And he was in class, and suddenly the door opened, and standing in the door was Winston Churchill. And he looked in the classroom and he said, "Young men, I'll answer one question." And my friend stuck up his hand and said, "I'm a young American. I want to go into politics. What should I do?" And Churchill looked at him and said, "Young man, study history, study history, study history," and walked out. Now, Washington studied history. Madison studied history. Jefferson studied history. They all read the Greeks. They all read the Romans. Cincinnatus was one of the Roman figures who Washington admired, and a number of others. But they talked that history, and they took examples from it. We're not doing that anymore. We don't know history very well. And
You were a history teacher when you started.
I'm the first one to say it. Yeah, I believe that if I was a good governor and I was good in politics, it's because I studied history. It came out of that study. And
History repeats itself.
history is, well, if it doesn't repeat itself, it rhymes, as somebody said. But so we've got to go back to history. We've got to look at it, and this is a wonderful opportunity to do it. Now, I worry that we're not putting enough emphasis into it. Now, we're going to have some wonderful programs on television. There's an American Revolutionary program that's coming on, I think, not too far from now, where the great, what's the name of the great documentarian who's done the Civil War?
Ken Burns.
Ken Burns is doing it.
Yeah, I saw that.
And that's going to be up. And there are going to be a number of books. There's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful book now. That's in its second volume, and the third got on the American Revolution from day one. And it's going to get a number of opportunities, in other words, to learn and to study and to see what's happened before.
I'm working right now with the Edison Foundation, Thomas Edison Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And we are in the early development stages of an essay program that they would get behind, and we'd find other grassroots individuals and organizations to support. And we're waiting for the fireworks to go off. They'll have the Philadelphia celebration, and it'll be a nice patriotic time. But then we got a lot of work to do
Yeah.
to make sure we get back to democracy working at its finest. So the idea is to have an essay program with our children, a national conversation with them, really, where we ask them 3 questions. One, what does this country look like 250 years later? The good, the bad, and the ugly. We want them to see the ugly, and they probably see it already, or they should. But we also want them to see the good,
Yeah.
because they have it pretty darn good
Yeah.
compared to the way our founding generation lived. The second question is going to be, what will you do to help form the more perfect union?
Good question.
What will you, emphasis on you, do to form the more perfect union? And the third one is, what's your arete? What's your highest, best sense of self? Who are your heroes? What wisdom do they have to offer? And we're figuring out all the right incentives to have to reward the winners, and putting names in time capsules and things like that. But you like the idea? I could use some validation. We could use some validation on
I
this.
love the idea because if you think about it, we've been extraordinarily lucky. I sometimes think if I could pick in the long history of this planet, I could pick a time to be born and to live, and I could pick a place. I think the United States of America, when I was born in the 30s and 40s, would have been the place I would have picked, because I have it better. And if not my own, not anything because of anything I did, but because of the time and place and what this country was doing at that particular time and place.
The greatest generation,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. No, I had 2 brothers in the Second World War, and Battle of the Bulge, both of them, and I was brought up with that kind of, with that kind of background. And I think we ought to realize where we are in history, where we are in history of this country, what people have done before, and that goes with the bad as well as the good. I mean, you can't, people have said that in the right, you can't sugarcoat history. But you can take the better examples and not the worse examples. I mean, there are people who did some things they shouldn't have, but there are also people who sacrificed tremendously. And because of who sacrifice, that's where we are today.
Yeah. Cutting through the clutter, though, social media, really, and the media itself it's so fractured now, and everybody, I think, is over messaged, and we're all preaching to one another. So somehow we've got to rise above, and I'm not sure how to do it, but you keep talking, and you
Yeah.
keep trying to get people's attention, and hopefully,
I'm trying to be very careful because I'm an old guy. And the danger with old guys is they're going to say, remember what it was like when we were young, and why can't you be that way?
right.
I try to avoid that all the time, but it's tempting. Because there were some things that I remember. That was the greatest generation in many ways. I mean, those people built this country in many, many ways.
And education was
Yes.
key. with
Education
them.
was absolutely key.
And our children should live better lives
Well,
than we've lived.
we forget we were the first country who really said that common public school is for everybody, regardless of where you came from, regardless of how much money you have. That was Horace Mann, the whole idea of that. We've got to find a few more Horace Manns. We've got to remember the ideals that were there, and the best, not the worst, the best. The ideals that really built this country in a good way. And try to find out where we've gone wrong, whether we can get back to them, how it can even improve them, and move forward. And we got to think that way. You can't just take what we have and relax with it.
Look, it comes down to someone's got to step up and be the even greater generation.
Yes.
Either this one
Yeah.
makes the sacrifice for the next one, or the next one says, "Get out of our way."
Yeah, that's right.
We'll be the even, but someone's got to step up.
It takes leadership.
Yeah.
And that means people who are the best of the generation deciding in a democracy public service is the best thing they can do with their lives. They're not going to make as much money as some of their friends, not going to have the easiest life, but they can be very proud of the fact that they've made a difference, that some things are better for a lot of people because of what they did.
Yeah.
And until you get those kind of people stepping forward, and until we as a country understand that and support those people coming forward, we're not going to make progress.
So if we're going to be the even greater generation, it goes back to compromising and working together, reaching across the aisle like you did so brilliantly, and providing our young children with heroes and wisdom, because it really is, I mean, we are so much better off than we were 250 years
Yeah.
ago, whether it's per capita income, whether it's having an iPhone, instant communication, and airplanes, and there's so much positive. I think we just all take it, too many of us take it for granted and aren't practicing gratitude, which is the mother of all virtues. But brilliant stuff on your part, not on my part. Moving to 9/11 Commission, if you don't mind. I mean, there's so many subjects I could talk to you about, so I got to kind of rush things along. You were the chairman of the 9/11 Commission. Your job was to evaluate what went wrong, what we need to do moving forward. For those that are listening in that aren't familiar with the 9/11 Commission, could you give a cursory overview of what went wrong and what measures have been taken so that, God forbid, that should happen again?
The attack on 9/11 that blew up the World Trade Center was the first time America had been attacked since, I guess, 1812, and the largest attack on American soil. And people now may not remember, oh, I haven't been alive then, but it was a huge shock to the system. The idea that an iconic building with thousands of people in it could be destroyed so suddenly was just something that shocked the system in a way the system hadn't been shocked before.
But how is that possible when you think about 93? They came so close.
Yes.
Their engineering was off.
Well,
If that bomb went up
yeah.
and compromised the column, the tower would have fallen into the other.
Oh, that's true. But it's not the way people looked at it. The Port Authority, I guess, and the authorities said, well, that was a one-off, and we've got those columns strengthened, we got this, we got that done. And people just went on. We also, I mean, what we documented, when we were asked to do really, because this was such a shock to the system, we were asked to answer the question, how could this happen? How could it have happened? And secondly, we were asked to make recommendations so it could never, ever happen again. Those were our two tasks. We didn't have much support at the beginning. The Congress and both parties didn't want us because they had their own committees and they thought they could do it. Or they thought they'd be safer if they did it than us. The two parties were worried that we're going into a presidential election, we'd make some recommendation which would tilt the election one way or the other, so they were scared of us. And so we didn't have an awful lot of cooperation. And we had 5 Democrats and 5 Republicans appointed by the most partisan people in the country. The majority of the House, the minority of the House, the majority of the Senate, the minority of the Senate. That's who made end up president appointing the chairman. He appointed me as chairman. So I had to deal with an equal number of Republicans and Democrats, most of whom had never met each other before. Most of whom came out of a partisan election system, and try to fulfill the mandate of the Congress. Say, how could this have happened? And how can we prevent it ever happening again? So when as chairman, I took a staff, or hired a staff, and made a number of rules. First of all, when I walked in, the Republicans were sitting over on the side of the room, the Democrats were sitting over the other side of the room. I said, we're not going to do that again. They didn't know me. I was some guy coming from this outside, basically. And I said, from now on, we're never going to meet without Republicans sitting next to Democrats, Democrats sitting next to Republicans. So we're never going to have a public hearing, never have a public meeting, never have a meeting. And so we...
That's an example where we hit rock bottom, and it was easier to get people
Yeah.
on the same page. But kudos to you for
Yeah.
saying politics out of here.
Yeah, and then we decided we would meet together. I had some dinner meetings so we could socialize with each other. And it took, because of the partisanship of Washington, it took about 2 months of meetings before we eventually started to see we were talking to each other, not as Republicans and Democrats, but as people together who were trying to solve a problem. And we had public hearings in a fraught atmosphere. We preempted the Today Show and all of that. I mean, our hearings were on television, preempting everything else. And the temptation was to be partisan. And the president was worried about us. He'd call me on the phone and say, you really think it's going to be all right? And we finally came up with a report. We had 70 staff people. I hired 3 historians because of what we were saying about history to take that side of it. And we wrote a report, a book which is still a college textbook. So it's what we said was accepted.
The 9/11 Commission report.
Yeah. And then at the end of it, we made 41 recommendations. First of all, we said, how could it have happened? How Al-Qaeda started, how they got into the United States, what failures of security we made in order to get into the United States. And then we made 41 recommendations. So this would never happen again. I think we were the last really bipartisan thing that was done in this country in a major way, because we got all Democrats and all Republicans to agree. Nobody ever thought it'd be unanimous. We were unanimous. And that enabled us to sell our recommendations. We got our recommendations through the House and through the Senate and signed by the president. And we still, one recommendation wasn't fulfilled, but all the rest were.
Let's break it down. One of the problems, as I recall, was turf wars and not coordinating.
Oh, yeah.
There's not enough coordination. Are we doing better on that front?
Well, we mandated.
Law enforcement coordination?
We mandated we do better.
Right.
What we found out is the FBI and the CIA didn't talk to each other. The FBI figured that's our territory, which is the United States. CIA figured foreign, and the two never met. So that the CIA knew that a couple of hijackers had gotten into the country. They didn't know they were hijacking, but they knew they were bad guys. They didn't tell the FBI. The FBI was looking around at these guys and thinking maybe they're suspicious, but they didn't have any evidence to move on them. If the two had just talked to each other, 9/11 would have been prevented, I believe, because they would have caught these guys early on. And there were silly things. I mean, the way we let people into the United States was flawed. The way we let people onto airplanes was flawed. I mean, no.
We had a watch list
Yeah.
at the time prior to 9/11, but it was not,
No.
there was a lot of bungling. There was not a lot of...
It wasn't helpful. So anyway, these guys who came into this country, most of them didn't speak English, were able to live in this country, plot, and we never picked them up.
I had a conversation with someone from the FBI in '99, and I shared a lot of. I wasn't the only one predicting that we were going to have a problem, but I worried about it in '99. I was thinking about Y2K. That
Yeah.
was the big thing then.
Yeah, it was.
They'll try to do something
Yeah.
spectacular at the 2000. But I talked to this person about my concern about airplanes into the World Trade Center, and they said they reminded me how close they came in '93. But they brought up a point, and I worry that it's still an issue to this day. They said it could be any target. It could be the Holland Tunnel. It could be the George Washington Bridge.
Yeah.
It could be the Sears Tower. We only have so many resources, was their point. So you've got the hatred and you've got technology, which is a terrible, duo. So how do you really stop it? Scotland Yard always says we have to be right all the time. They just have to be right once. The resources are still limited, don't you think?
Yeah, resources are limited. But because of those 41 recommendations, we believe the chances are much less of anything happening like that again. We have a much better way of detecting people who come into this country now. We have a much better way of protecting our resources. We, for instance, now force the FBI and CIA to talk to each other. They meet every week and they talk to each other.
Right.
By law, they have to talk to each other. And each of those 41 recommendations were a way to pick up a flaw. And
We're all also more vigilant as a people, right? The whole
Yes.
see something,
yes.
say something. We're on guard, but we got to continue to be.
Oh, yeah. You've got to be aware this is always a danger.
You let your guard down, and
Yeah.
that's
That's exactly right. It's a continuing concern, a continuing problem, and we've got to, and we've also, by the way, have got to make sure the very best in our security agencies, National Security Council, FBI, CIA, got to make sure they continue to be the best of the best.
education. It comes back to each time, right?
Yeah, that's
Inspiring people with heroes and wisdom, and trying to inspire them to be their best, so that it's works for our
With
country.
that 9/11 commission, we started out not knowing each other, 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats. In working together, we not only became colleagues, we became friends. And I'm still close to those people. And we're still friends. And that's the way it should be when you work on a project.
I wish I could get back to when you were governor and we just worked closer. All of this that we're talking about is overcoming adversity. And many people don't know the adversity you overcame that I find very inspiring. Talk about the adversity that you had to overcome early in your life.
Well, I had a couple of problems. I'm dyslexic. I was dyslexic before they identified dyslexia. And so that all people knew was I wasn't very good in school. I reversed numbers, reversed letters. And the grades that I brought home were terrible. And that leads to some social problems. One of the problems it led to was stuttering. I think that the one led to the other. Had a terrible stutter. So there's somebody called on me in class, and they knew the answer. I never said the answer because I figured I'd stutter, and then everybody in class would laugh. And one of the reasons I love teachers and love education is that there were a couple of teachers in my school who went way beyond anything they were paid to do. Spent extra time with me. One of them, I have a letter. One of them wrote my mother and said, he's not dumb. People think he's dumb. He's not dumb. I don't think he's dumb at all. But he's got this problem. I've seen it in some other kids. I think he can be overcome, but we got to work with him. And if those teachers hadn't worked with me in that way, I would have been a very different person.
Wow.
And so that's why one of the reasons I've always loved teachers and thought education was
And you paid it forward when you taught at Brantwood?
Well, Brentwood was a camp for underprivileged kids that I ran, and that was that changed my life too. I mean, I was working with kids from New York and Boston who had no advantage whatsoever. That was before a lot of the social services we have now existed. And so trying to help these kids get through life it turned out to be a privilege. I mean, I'd never done anything I enjoyed as much as I enjoyed that job. I did that for 7, 8 years. Did it all through college. I ran the camp. I didn't do any other college activities because I was running the camp.
So we got to work with our children that are facing adversity. We've got to do more as their elders. But what advice would you give to a young person, or anyone for that matter, any age, that's facing adversity?
Don't let it get to you. I mean, it's easy to say, but everybody, I don't think anybody goes through life without adversity at some point in some way, some worse than others. But we also have, not only in history, but in literature, example after example after example of how you overcome adversity and how people have done it. And it's not easy, and it takes help. If you don't have somebody who you can look to, there's not a mentor out there. That's why some of these programs like Big Brother, Big Sister, that's why they work so well. It's like give a kid who's got perhaps no chance in life an example and a help of a way to succeed in life. And that's what it's all about. It's all about reaching down and helping somebody in some way or other to have a better life than they certainly would have. Sometimes a better life than you've had.
And if you're facing the adversity, there's always someone out there that could help.
Yeah.
If you're willing to ask for the help. And at the same time, our salvation is on the other side of never giving up.
That's right.
Right?
That's right. Never, ever, ever give up. I mean, that's absolutely true. But, you know, people have got to reach out whether or not somebody asks for help. I would never have asked for help when I had those problems. Never. I just wouldn't. But those teachers saw a problem and came to me and decided they'd help anyway. And they sort of made me reach out because they said, you know, stay after school. And we want to work with you on this passage. We want to do this. We want to do that. I didn't ask for that. It was my salvation, but I didn't ask for it. They reached out and did it.
But you continue to pay it forward also. Let's continue on with the education front. You put your money where your mouth is. Mm-hmm. You became the president of Drew University. Talk about your experience with Drew. I'm sure it was very fulfilling.
It was wonderful because I was a sort of an untypical college president, given my background and everything else. But I've always loved teaching. I mean, I thought I was going to be a teacher all my life. I mean, I got into politics. It's another whole story. I got into politics by accident. It was a series of accidents that got me into politics. And so I loved teaching. I always wanted to be a teacher. And at Drew, I was able to be a teacher again. I mean, I was never there without teaching. I always taught a course. I was faculty advisor of the major student activities. One of my jobs was of the 3,000 or 4,000 students we had that I wanted to know every one of their names at least before they graduated, so I could greet them as they're walking across campus. And my great pleasure there was not the fact we raised a lot of money or moved to the university or built some buildings, that kind of thing. My pleasure was in the students and the fact that some of them are still very close friends today. In fact, one of my students just had her daughter graduate from Drew. And
we have a lot of problems on college campuses, though, these days. What advice do you give to the leadership on college campuses across the country?
Remember what it's all about. It's not about the trustees. It's not about the faculty, as much as the faculty will tell you it's about them. It's about the students. And I think a college president who sits up in an ivory tower and administrates is not a good college president. Teach if you can. If you can't teach, get to know the students in some other way. But it's all about the students. And if you don't know the students, I don't know how you can be a great college president.
Open door policy
Yeah.
is what you're
Yeah.
advocating.
I had
Talk. You come in and talk. I'll
Yeah.
listen.
I had something which we call open hour every week. And any student could come in on any problem that they might have and talk to me. And it was always full. There was a lot of kids always come in.
People got things to say,
Yeah.
especially in this world.
Yeah. So it was, but that's what I think. So it's a tough job these days, college president. It's a tough job, but it's an important job. And faculty isn't easy. Faculty assumes the college president is against them, that they should be against him or her.
Continuing on with the advice subject, what advice do you give the next governor of New Jersey on any issues that you know the issues that the state is facing fiscally?
Yeah.
Start with fiscal. I mean, the pensions, the healthcare costs are ballooning. How do we get out of this mess?
We've got this is what's very, very difficult. I came into the governorship at a time when everybody thought it was a difficult problem because we had a budget deficit, and the state was in a lot of those problems. And I had to. I'd promised to cut some taxes. Well, I cut those taxes, but I raised a couple of other little things to make sure that the schools particularly were able to operate without having any cuts. And I did some things people didn't think you could do. I knew that people in business move because of money, move because of taxes, move because of salary, move because of everything else. So we started off by lowering costs in the state and abolishing a few business taxes, which people said you can't do that, you need the money too much. Well, we were charging too much money, and people were going to other states. So I set a rule. I'm going to look and see what's happening. Our competitor is not the country as a whole. Our competitor is Connecticut, Pennsylvania, the states around us, New York. I decided that I could do anything I want with taxes as long as we kept it lower than those states. So in my entire governorship, we kept the taxes lower than those states. And as if you, I remember when I abolished the inheritance tax, it was like a tip Connecticut. A lot of businesses just automatically came in. People do move because of that. And it is not, you can't raise money continually by taxes. You got to raise money by raising productivity. We did enough things in my first couple of years so that we created 750,000 new jobs in New Jersey. And I didn't have to raise taxes after that because that's how the money came.
So if you're not going to raise taxes, where does the revenue?
You got to cut some taxes, I think. Revenue comes from productivity. Now, you can't do that all at once. You can't suddenly come into office to do that, but you can do it as we did, gradually, bit by bit. And when business people see that's the kind of state you're going to run, they'll come here. Or if they're here already, they'll create more jobs here rather than some other state. And that's the only way I know to create wealth. You're not going to create wealth by raising taxes.
You got to be business friendly.
Yeah, we've got I think we have the largest exodus of wealthy people from our state than any other state in the country right now. We can't live like that. Because when they leave, if the wealthiest people leave, you're not going to leave, I'm not going to leave, we're going to have to pick up the difference.
Right.
That's how you get in this cycle of raising taxes every year, which the cycle the state's been in. It's raise taxes every couple of years, you raise taxes again. And this business about raise taxes to the wealthy doesn't work because they're the most mobile people in the country. They can move much easier than a poor person.
And now we live in the remote age where people could work
Yeah,
anywhere
absolutely.
in the world.
Absolutely.
So
So
it's
we've
quite,
got to create the circumstances where people who are well off want to live in New Jersey. And we can't spend our lives demonizing them. We want them here. So all this running along saying, how are we going to get the money, tax the rich, it doesn't work.
and we got to cut wherever we can cut,
Yeah, that's right.
clearly,
That's right.
on the expense side.
You could do that at the federal level. I mean, raising taxes on the wealthy at the federal level is something I think we ought to be doing right now. Because not that many people are going to move out of the country. But New Jersey, you can't do that.
But we can cut bureaucratic
You've
expenses.
got to cut some
more.
things. Yeah, you've got to get the expenses down. I mean, for instance, you mentioned earlier that New Jersey has one of the most recognized school systems in the country. We compete with Massachusetts. One year one's better, another year another better. But we spend almost 30% more than Massachusetts to get the same result. All right, that's not good. We should Massachusetts get the same result for less dollars. We should be able to get the same result for less dollars.
Any thoughts on electricity bills? Because that seems to be one of the hot topics right now in the gubernatorial race.
Well, it is because I think people want. It was obvious to anybody who wanted to do the work that this was going to happen. I mean, we were doing things that were going to cause the bills to go up. We decided one group was going to get out. The legislature said we're going to be out of office before some of this happens. It'll happen after the next election. So let's let it happen. And now everybody's getting hit. Part of it was I think we went after green energy the wrong way. I built the last nuclear plant in the country, I think, here in New Jersey, which has been supplying clean power at low cost ever since. I mean, that's one of the things we had to look at again and look at some of the other, but
Investment in infrastructure.
infrastructure. And I think if you know what you're looking at, you look at solar. It's a very good source of power. Windmills, not so much. Because what do you do when the wind goes down? As it does periodically. We went after the windmills. And I think that's all bust now, or most of it.
They're still going to build one, I think, off of Long Beach Island. I think it's still planned.
Maybe.
But the economics just aren't there.
Yeah, no. And so we got to look at the economics, pay attention to them, and recognize the fact that we've got to supply power to a state that we cannot afford to do what it costs that the people can't afford.
Yeah.
So we've got to look not only at the best energy, but also at the cheapest energy.
What else is next level, in your opinion, for our public servants in New Jersey to be not just thinking about, but acting on? Is it tourism? Is it the Jersey pride?
Tourism's always important, and we've forgotten that. We haven't put major money into tourism since I left office. I like to think somebody's peripheral things are important. I mean, there's a reason when New York City did a campaign years ago. The whole campaign was about Broadway and the arts, because that was what I thought was attracting people in New York. So I think doing something about the arts will bring money into the state. And we should do it because New Jersey now, if you want to go in and spend an evening in New York, to have dinner and a show,
About $30,000?
it's huge. I mean, it takes you a whole, and the idea that we don't have a state here. We have some very good arts organizations, but not enough. And the idea that people now feel they have to go to New York is crazy.
I imagine when it comes to your own pride in New Jersey, there's a lot of things you're proud of, from horse country to the Jersey Shore. What are you most proud of?
About the state or
About our state.
About the state itself? I think it's people. we've got a wonderful, wonderful group of people. You walk down the street in New Jersey, you run into these feisty people, they're Jerseyans, and I'm still, I don't know why it is, but I'm still recognized on the street occasionally, and people come up to me and start talking.
Jersey and you, they try to imitate that.
That's what they say.
New England accent.
They remember New Jersey and you perfect together after all these years.
Come on, do it once for those listening out there. Give us the line.
Well, I used to say, in our promoting, say, New Jersey and you perfect together.
That sounds just like it sounded back in the 80s.
Yeah, and it worked. It worked. People tell me that's the best advertising people tell me it's the best tourism slogan and campaign ever done by any state.
People loved it, and we should get back to it. So that's a great answer, and that's how you move forward in a democracy. Be proud of our people. And we are the most diverse nation, most diverse state, I should say, in the nation. And it's a wonderful thing when all that diversity brings the best and brightest out.
Yes, it does.
And
yes, it does.
So going back to the basics of being proud of our people makes all the sense in the world.
I got to welcome people too. When I felt really, every now and then, things wouldn't go right when I was governor, and since, and you get a little depressed one reason or another. You know what I used to do? I used to go to an immigration ceremony and see these new people sworn into the Americans, and you'd talk to them. Some of them swum into this country to get here. Others been waiting in some Latin American countries sometimes for 10, 12 years before they could get in. And they're from all over the world. And they're so excited. And they're so excited that they're Americans.
By the way, my wife is in this category.
Yeah.
She's from Sweden.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know how exciting it is and how wonderful it is. And if you go to one of those immigration ceremonies and talk to those people, I always got totally reinvigorated and totally more excited again about the potential of this country and the people who make it up, and no other country in the world like it. And that's what's so exciting.
America's a melting pot. That's what it is. Irish and Italian and people from throughout the world. But we're demonizing each other way too much, and that's not a good thing for the future.
No. We do things and then we overdo them. There's no question that for the last 25 years, we've had an open border, pretty close to it. And that's wrong. Trump's right when he says you can't have a country with an open border. You can't. But now we've gone to the other extreme, where we sort of don't let anybody in, or demonize some of the folks who are here. And you can't do that either. I mean, there's a very happy medium where you have an immigration system that you may have to wait for a number of years to get in. But when you get in, and you take a test. And by the way, those tests that the immigrants take to get into this country, I think some of our students now are very lucky they don't have to take them.
Right.
Because they don't know the answers. The immigrants do. And the pride in their faces when they become citizens, and the love of this country, which they start with when they become immigrants, is quite wonderful.
Life really is a work in progress for all of us and for our nation, and it really is about making the adjustments day by day and finding that balance. So to your point, you can't overreact, but you have to solve the problem as well. So it's finding that happy medium. What advice do you have for children?
Well, one part of it is my children study history. Understand your country, understand who you are, what your place is in it. And then recognize the fact that you're going to have failures. But that shouldn't slow you down. I had in my life failure after failure, really, particularly when I was younger. And you pick yourself up and you go on. And that's what always been wonderful about this country and this state is you have the ability to do that.
People don't realize that, go back a couple hundred years, you're mother was related, I think, to, she was a descendant of Peter Stuyvesant,
Yeah, she was.
who, who was the first administrator. I
Yeah.
mean, he was there at the dawn of Manhattan when it was starting to take off, working for the Dutch, I guess. Your great grandfather, perhaps, the Livingston family, here at the beginning of America, 250 years ago.
First governor of New Jersey.
Yeah, that's first governor of New Jersey. What would he and your family say if they came out of that estate, which is still there, by the way, on Morris Avenue across from Kean College? I grew up, by the way, my first apartment was Pierce Manor.
Oh, really?
And
Oh,
I used to look, as a 5-year-old kid, I would look in the direction of that estate, and I would feel the history. This really felt like was I a cowboy or an Indian in the last life? I really felt history looking a couple hundred yards in that direction toward the estate. If they walked out to Morris Avenue and saw what they would see, all the cars, all the people, Kean University, what would they say positive? What would they say negative, do you think?
I think they might run back in again.
A little overstimulation,
Yes.
right?
But I think no. I think that has to be proud of what this country's accomplished and where we are today and where the state is. It was an interesting house. I mean, it's first home of the first governor of the state, but then beyond that, Alexander Hamilton stayed there when he was looking for a place to go to school. When he first came from the West Indies.
Was George Washington there?
George Washington stopped by
He stopped by.
for the night, I think. And Martha came. John Jay got married there.
Amazing.
Yeah, so it's a lot of history there, and it's fun to see. But again, you see that recognizing that we've come a long way. A lot of it very good. And I think we recognize how far we've come, but recognize we can't stop. And that we've got a lot of ways to go, and we can get better. And that these kids who are coming over here as immigrants, or these kids who are the children of immigrants, are going to be our next presidents, and our next senators, our next inventors, next everything else. And we've got to recognize that unless we give them the preparation, unless we take education seriously, that this country is not going to be what it can be and what we need it to be.
So really, I mean, you've probably thought a lot about what would my descendants be thinking and saying. And I could only imagine this, everything you're saying, or most of it, is probably what they were saying. I mean, they were thinking life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Yep.
We are a land of immigrants. That's who we are.
Yep.
We came from other countries. And so they'd probably say lots of problems, but a lot of good things going on too. Keep dreaming.
Well, the idea that document, the Constitution, is still there, basically as they wrote it.
They'd be surprised, many of them.
Wouldn't they? Because no document in their history had ever lasted that long.
Franklin was very skeptical, Benjamin Franklin, that it would last, right?
Oh, yeah.
That famous line on the floor of the convention, it's a democracy if you can keep it.
If you can keep it. If you can keep it. Yeah, I know because no document had ever lasted. Well, no, figuring this was the reason that they wanted to put some reins on a democracy, some checks and balances, is because no pure democracy had ever lasted longer than anybody's lifetime at that point in the history of the world.
Yeah.
And so they said, all right, democracy we want. Let's put some checks and balances on it, because pure democracies don't last. So let's put the Senate by the states and the House by the population. Let's have a Supreme Court. Let's have a balance between the executive and the legislative.
It's a compromise.
Yeah,
Really,
it's
the
the
concept
whole
of,
thing is a compromise.
yeah, it won't work
Yeah,
any other way. People will rebel.
I don't think any of them would have expected it to last as long as it has.
Yeah.
but they hoped they wanted it to last long enough so the country could be prosperous and safe and someplace to get put a hold of its head in a very dangerous world. But if I don't think any of them would have expected it to last more than 50 years, probably.
The technology, watching a plane go overhead,
Yeah,
watching a
that's right.
car go by, that would they be impressed? I guess they would, right? People are moving
Yeah.
up in the air.
Yeah.
I mean, did they envision that kind of a future where technology would?
No, I don't think you could, and that's why I think it's hard for us to imagine what the next technology. I mean, AI is probably the greatest breakthrough in a long, long time, but where that's going to go
We got to harness it.
and whether we can harness it or not
Right.
is still to be decided.
Yeah.
That's why we got to elect good people,
Yeah.
because they're going to have to make those decisions.
Well, we're going to keep working at it here at the Hall of Fame in terms of
right.
providing heroes and wisdom. And you have brought so much wisdom here today. I'm
How about that?
eternally grateful, and I hope our leaders will listen in on this podcast because there's so much good stuff to really think about and hopefully pursue.
It's wonderful to be here and looking to the individuals who comprise this Hall of Fame. Got a lot of examples.
Edison, Einstein, and Thomas Kean. I use that line. That's my throwaway line at one point or another during every podcast, and everybody loves it. How do you not love that?
I love it.
Springsteen's got to love that.
That's
Edison, Einstein, and Springsteen.
Einstein, when I went to college, Einstein was, I guess, his last year or two of life.
You were in Princeton when he was there.
He was one of the tourist attractions.
Wow.
As a freshman, everybody said, you go see Nassau Hall because that's where the British, Alexander Hamilton rolled a cannonball through Nassau. But then you go and look at the path between Einstein's home and the Institute for Advanced Studies, because at the same time, exact same time every day, he takes that walk. If you're on the sidewalk, you'll see him. So he was a tourist attraction.
Yeah.
We went and looked at Einstein.
His house is still there on Mercer Street.
His house is still there. I was in it last year with a friend of mine who lives there now. And there's Einstein's piano,
Yeah.
the one he played.
Well, I'll end it on this note, and I'm sure you would agree. The great physicist Stephen Hawking said, "What a time to be alive."
Yeah.
It's all sort of
Yes.
blowing up,
Yeah.
And we have all these existential threats from AI to nuclear to the environment. But what a time to inspire
Yes.
the next Albert Einstein
Yes, that's right.
to help
That's right.
rise above it. So
Yeah.
I thank you, sir, for you being so inspirational. You're helping us on that journey. And I hope you'll come back and be my guest again because I'll probably think of 50 things I forgot to ask you, and I'll be kicking myself on the way home.
Steve, it's wonderful to be here with you, and thank you, and congratulations on this Hall of Fame. It's wonderful.
Thank you for helping to inspire it.
Yeah.
It's a great honor.
Thank you. All right.